I was living the van life dream, cruising along the west coast, soaking in the freedom of the open road. Los Angeles was just another stop, another corner of this sprawling adventure. Parking lots became my temporary homes, safe havens where I could rest, rejuvenate, and continue my journey. But one night in LA, that feeling of safety shattered. I'd parked in a quiet, dimly lit lot, thinking it was just another routine stop. As dusk fell, the usual city sounds faded, leaving a deafening silence. That's when I saw him, a man lurking in the shadows, his eyes fixated on me and my van. I tried to brush it off, assuming he was just passing through, but his lingering gaze unnerved me. There was something off about him, a predatory aura that sent shivers down my spine. I kept my doors locked, my instincts on high alert. Hours passed, and I tried to sleep, but a sense of unease lingered. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on my van. My heart raced as I peered out the window, and there he was, that same man, staring straight at me with an unsettling intensity. I shouted at him, demanding to know what he wanted, but he just stood there, grinning. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was something cold, something malicious. Fear coiled in my chest as I fumbled for my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. I felt trapped, vulnerable. This deserted lot had transformed into a nightmare, and I was right in the center of it. He circled my van like a predator stalking its prey, and panic set in. I had to get out of there, had to find safety. With trembling hands, I started the engine and bolted out of the lot, the sound of screeching tires echoing in the quiet night. But my relief was short-lived. I noticed his silhouette in my rearview mirror, chasing after me, his footsteps quickening. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew it wasn't good. I navigated through the dark streets, desperate to lose him. Fear clouded my thoughts, and I was a mess of panic and dread. I took sharp turns, hoping to shake him off, but he persisted, closing in on my van. It was a game of cat and mouse, and I was losing. I needed help, but the streets were empty, and I was alone in this terrifying chase. I finally spotted a gas station up ahead, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. I swerved into the lot, hoping for a crowd, for safety. But as I scrambled out of my van, there he was, right behind me, his eyes burning into mine. I bolted towards the station, screaming for help, but there was no one. It was like a deserted wasteland. He grabbed my arm, his grip like a vice, and terror surged through me. I fought with all my strength, breaking free and sprinting into the store. The cashier dialed 911 as I gasped for air, explaining the situation between breathless pleas for help. The minutes dragged like hours until the police arrived. But when they searched the area, the man was gone, vanished into the night. I spent that night in a hotel, the fear and adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I couldn't shake off the dread, the uncertainty of why that man had targeted me, why he had fixated on my van. It was a brush with something dark and inexplicable, something that left me questioning my safety at every turn. I decided to embark on a van life journey along the Oregon coast, seeking freedom and solitude. The rugged coastline seemed like the perfect escape, away from the noise of city life. I found this remote spot by the cliffs, thinking it'd be peaceful for the night. The crashing waves and the salty breeze were soothing as the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. But then, things took a strange turn. I noticed this guy, standing at a distance, watching me. He seemed out of place, just lingering there, his gaze fixed on my van. It made me uneasy, this feeling of being observed. I thought maybe he was another traveler, but there was something off about his demeanor. He didn't seem like he was there to enjoy the coastline like me. As night descended, I heard footsteps outside my van. I mean, it was strange, isolated as I was, to hear someone moving around. I peeked out, but there was no one there. It was so quiet, just the sound of the waves crashing against the cliffs. I felt this chill creeping up my spine, this inexplicable fear. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't shake off this feeling of being watched. I mean, why was this guy lingering around my van at night? At some point, I saw him again, standing under the moonlight, just watching. I mean, it sent shivers down my spine, this feeling of being pursued by someone I didn't know. I called out, asking if he needed help or if he was lost, but he didn't respond. It was like he was playing this game, this unsettling game of cat and mouse. I mean, I felt this growing panic, this sense of danger looming. I wanted to leave, to drive away, but I was alone in the middle of nowhere. Then, things got worse. I heard tapping on the windows of my van, slow and deliberate. I mean, it was terrifying, this feeling of someone trying to get in. I locked all the doors, but then I heard this voice, distant and chilling, calling out my name. I mean, it froze me in fear, this inexplicable voice in the dead of night. I felt this overwhelming terror, this sense of being hunted by someone who knew me but was a complete stranger. I mean, I didn't know what to do, where to go. I called for help, but there was no one around for miles. I mean, it was just me and this mysterious figure playing this sick game. I heard footsteps circling my van, this slow and deliberate pace that felt menacing. I mean, I was trapped, surrounded by this unknown threat. Then, my van started shaking violently, as if someone was pushing against it. I mean, I was petrified, not knowing if I'd make it through the night. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, this fear of what might happen next. I mean, I was at the mercy of this mysterious figure, and I didn't know his intentions. At some point, it stopped, the shaking, the tapping, the whispers. I mean, it was silent, almost too silent, and that's when I heard a knock on the door. I didn't move, didn't make a sound, hoping whoever it was would go away. But then, the knocking grew louder, more insistent. I mustered the courage to look through the window, and there he was, the mysterious man, staring right back at me. I mean, it felt like he was looking into my soul, this haunting gaze that pierced through me. I didn't know what he wanted, why he was tormenting me. I mean, I was terrified, this feeling of being pursued by someone I couldn't escape. I didn't sleep that night, didn't dare to close my eyes. I mean, it was a night of sheer terror, this feeling of being at the mercy of someone who meant me harm. At dawn, he was gone, vanished into thin air. I mean, it felt like a nightmare that finally ended, but the fear lingered, the memories haunting me. I reported what happened to the cops, but they found no trace of anyone matching his description. I was living the van life, cruising through the vast and desolate expanse of the Mojave Desert, seeking solace in its silent embrace. It was my haven, a place where I found freedom and solitude. But one fateful night, that serenity was shattered. I parked my van amidst the sprawling sands, feeling the oppressive weight of the darkness settling in. It was a moonless night, the stars the only glimmer of light in the pitch-black desert. As I settled in for the night, a peculiar sensation crept over me, a sense of being watched. I glanced around, but the desert was still and quiet, yet that feeling persisted, lingering like a haunting whisper. That's when I saw her, a silhouette against the moonless night, a lone figure standing in the distance. I assumed she was another nomad, seeking shelter in the vast expanse. But as the night progressed, I sensed something unsettling about her presence. She never moved, just stood there, an enigmatic figure in the moonless void. Hours passed, and an eerie feeling nestled in my gut. I couldn't shake the sensation that she was watching me, studying my every move. I tried to ignore it, to brush it off as a trick of the mind in the desolate desert, but it was an itch I couldn't scratch. As the night wore on, a bone-chilling feeling swept over me. A creeping sense of dread that something wasn't right. I turned on my van's headlights, casting an eerie glow over the desert, hoping she would vanish into the night. But she remained, a solitary figure against the darkness. I tried to focus on something else, anything to distract myself from this inexplicable fear. But when I looked back, she was closer, much closer. It was as if the shadows themselves had brought her nearer, her presence now looming just beyond the van. I locked my doors, my heart racing, my breath shallow. Fear gripped me like a vice, the desert silence amplifying its intensity. I didn't know what she wanted, why she was fixated on me, and that uncertainty only fueled my terror. I didn't dare to close my eyes, fearing that when I opened them, she'd be right outside my window. Time seemed suspended in that night, an eternity of dread and apprehension. Suddenly, there was a knock on my door, a sound that jolted me from my paralyzed state. My heart hammered in my chest as I cautiously peeked outside the window. She stood there, an inscrutable expression on her face, her eyes piercing through the darkness. I asked her what she wanted, my voice trembling. But she didn't respond, just continued staring with an unnerving intensity. I shouted, demanding she leave, but she remained rooted in that spot, a haunting presence in the desolate desert. With trembling hands, I started my van and sped off into the night, the desert landscape blurring past me. Fear and confusion clouded my mind as I navigated the winding roads, desperate to escape her haunting presence. I drove for what felt like hours, but that feeling of being watched lingered. I couldn't shake off the terror that she might reappear at any moment. Every shadow, every gust of wind felt like her silent approach. Eventually, I reached a small town and found refuge in a motel, the fear still coursing through my veins. We were driving through Texas, my boyfriend and I, in our beat-up old van. We'd been on the road for days, living that van life. It was getting late, and we needed to do laundry, so we found this small laundromat in a quiet town. It was late, but the place had a few lights on, and we figured it'd be alright to do a quick wash. The laundromat looked deserted, except for one guy sitting outside. He was smoking, just staring at nothing in particular. I felt a bit uneasy, but my boyfriend brushed it off, said it was probably just a guy taking a break. We parked the van and gathered our clothes, heading inside. The place was empty, quiet, except for the hum of the machines. We started loading our laundry, chatting quietly. But then, I noticed the guy from outside. He was inside now, just standing there, watching us. He had this weird vibe, like he didn't belong. I whispered to my boyfriend, but he shrugged it off, said maybe the guy needed to use a machine or something. But this guy, he didn't have any laundry with him. He was just standing there, staring, not doing anything. We tried to focus on our laundry, but it felt like his eyes were on us the whole time. I could feel this tension building up, like something wasn't right. I told my boyfriend I wanted to leave, but he said we'd be done soon, just to ignore the guy. When we finished, we quickly packed our clothes into the van and headed for the door. But that guy, he followed us out. I felt a chill run down my spine as he started walking towards us. He didn't say anything, just kept this blank expression, like he was in some trance. My boyfriend tried to be friendly, said hello, but the guy didn't respond. He just kept getting closer, and that's when I noticed his hand was tucked into his jacket. Panic surged through me, and I tugged at my boyfriend's sleeve, urging him to hurry. But before we could get into the van, the guy stopped right in front of us. His eyes were cold, distant, and he slowly pulled out his hand from his jacket. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I swore I saw something glinting in his hand. I froze, not knowing what to do, when suddenly another car pulled into the lot. The headlights flooded the area, and the guy hesitated for a moment before quickly walking away into the darkness. We wasted no time, jumped into the van, and sped off, heart racing like crazy. We didn't stop until we reached a motel a few towns away. We locked ourselves in, shaking, trying to make sense of what just happened. I don't know what that guy's intentions were, but it felt like we narrowly avoided something terrible. We reported it to the police, but they couldn't find the guy. They told us to be careful, to stay in well-lit areas, and to keep an eye out. But that encounter, it left us rattled. We didn't sleep much that night, jumping at every sound outside. Even now, driving through Texas, I can't shake off that chilling encounter. I split up with my ex, couldn't afford rent on my own, so I brought and moved into my van, roaming through the vast expanse of Colorado's Rocky Mountains. It was freeing, in a way, finding solace in the isolation of remote parking spots, away from the chaos of the city. One night, I settled into a secluded spot, a picturesque clearing nestled among the towering trees. But the tranquility shattered when I heard a snap, like a branch breaking in the distance. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the wilderness animals, maybe. But the unease lingered. Hours passed, the night grew darker, the air heavier. It was then that I saw him, a shadow lurking in the trees. My heart thundered against my chest as he emerged, tall and menacing, his silhouette a chilling presence in the moonlight. I tried to ignore him, pretend I hadn't seen, but his figure remained, lurking, watching. I locked the van, shut the curtains, but the fear gnawed at me. I couldn't shake off the feeling that he was waiting for something. The forest grew silent, a stark contrast to the usual sounds of nature. I dared a glance outside, and there he was, closer now, his eyes fixed on me. My blood ran cold as he moved, slow, deliberate steps toward the van. Panic surged through me, an instinct to flee, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in the van, feeling the weight of his gaze pressing down on me. He stood there, just watching, and I couldn't decipher his intentions. Minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity. I didn't know what he wanted, why he was there. His presence felt invasive, suffocating, like he was tearing through the walls of my sanctuary. Then came the knock, a sharp rap against the van's door. I flinched, my heart racing, but I didn't respond. Maybe he'd leave if I pretended I wasn't there. But the knock persisted, growing louder, more insistent. My hand shook as I fumbled for my phone, ready to call for help, but there was no signal. Trapped, alone with this menacing stranger in the heart of the mountains. And then, silence. The knocking ceased. I dared another look outside, heart pounding in my ears. He was gone, vanished into the night. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. A scraping sound echoed from the back of the van, a shiver-inducing noise that sent terror coursing through me. Someone was trying to open the doors. Panic seized me, my mind racing, searching for a way out. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrambled to start the van. The engine roared to life, and I sped off into the darkness, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The road was unforgiving, winding through the mountains. Fear had replaced any sense of direction. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that haunting encounter. Hours later, I found a gas station, a flickering beacon of safety in the night. I parked, breathless, heart still pounding, feeling the weight of the night's terror weighing me down. I stayed there until dawn, exhaustion finally pulling me into an uneasy sleep. But even in the light of day, the memory lingered, the fear, the unknown intentions of that threatening stranger haunting my thoughts. That night changed something in me. The freedom of van life became a prison, every secluded spot an echo of that chilling encounter. The isolation, once a comfort, now felt suffocating. I moved on, but the fear stayed a constant reminder of that night in the heart of the Rockies, a nightmare I couldn't escape. I ventured into Palo Duro Canyon in my trusty van, seeking solace in the wilderness. The canyon, with its rugged beauty, seemed like the perfect escape from the chaos of city life. I found a remote spot to park my van, surrounded by the stunning cliffs and the vast expanse of the canyon. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of red and orange. It was serene, with the quiet whispers of the wind and the distant echoes of wildlife. But then, things took an eerie turn. I spotted the sky, lingering around the canyon. He seemed out of place, just watching, observing. It made me uneasy, this feeling of someone intruding into my solitude. I thought maybe he was another nature enthusiast like me, but there was something about his presence that felt off. He didn't seem to be there to enjoy the beauty of the canyon. As darkness enveloped the canyon, I heard noises outside my van. I mean, it's normal to hear sounds in the wild, but these felt different, intentional. I peered out, but there was no one there. It was so quiet, so still, yet I felt this growing unease, this sense of being watched. I tried to shake it off, to tell myself it was just my imagination. But then, things got stranger. I noticed items around my van were moved, as if someone had been snooping. I felt this knot in my stomach, this inexplicable fear. I mean, who was out there? Why were they messing with my things? At some point, I caught a glimpse of him, standing at a distance, watching my van. It sent shivers down my spine, this feeling of being monitored by someone I didn't know. I called out, asking if he needed help or if he was lost, but he didn't respond. It was like he was lurking in the shadows, this unwelcome presence in the remote canyon. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't shake off this feeling of impending danger. I mean, why was this guy hanging around my van at night? I heard footsteps circling my van, slow and deliberate. I mean, it was terrifying, this feeling of someone getting closer. I locked the doors, but then I heard this voice, distant yet clear, calling out my name. I mean, it froze me in terror, this inexplicable voice in the dead of night. I wanted to leave, to drive away from that isolated spot, but fear held me captive. I was alone in the middle of nowhere, vulnerable and terrified. Then, my van started shaking violently, as if someone was trying to break in. I mean, it was petrifying, this feeling of being under attack. I called for help, but there was no one around for miles. I mean, it was just me and this mysterious figure playing this twisted game. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, this fear of what might happen next. I mean, I was trapped, surrounded by this unknown threat. At some point, the shaking stopped, the whispers faded, and there was this eerie silence. I mean, it was too quiet, too unsettling. I didn't dare peek outside, fearing what I might see. I mean, I was at the mercy of this intruder, and I didn't know his intentions. At dawn, he was gone, vanished into the canyon. I mean, it was a relief, but I was still shook up. I was parked at this old dock near Lake Michigan. The place was quiet, serene, the kind of spot you find in the middle of nowhere. It was just me and my van, enjoying the peacefulness of the water, the sound of waves crashing against the shore. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. It was beautiful. I was cooking dinner when I heard something outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard footsteps. Someone was out there, walking around. I peeked through the window, trying to see who it was, but it was too dark. I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was another traveler passing by, checking out the view. But then, the footsteps got closer. They were deliberate, heavy. I felt a chill run down my spine. I turned off the stove, trying not to make any noise, hoping whoever it was would just go away. I sat there in the dim light, listening intently. That's when I saw him. A man, tall and lanky, emerged from the shadows. He was just standing there, staring at my van. I couldn't see his face clearly, but something about him felt off. He didn't move, just kept staring. My heart started racing, and I felt this fear creeping up inside me. I didn't know what to do. Should I call for help? Should I confront him? But before I could decide, he started walking towards my van. Slow, deliberate steps, like he had all the time in the world. Panic set in, and I fumbled for my phone, ready to dial 911 if things went south. He reached the van and started circling it, running his fingers along the side. I was frozen, unable to move or make a sound. Then, he stopped right in front of my window. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't see me. But he did. His eyes locked with mine through the glass, and I swear there was something twisted in his gaze. He smiled, this sinister grin that sent shivers down my spine. I felt like prey being hunted. My hands were shaking as I reached for the keys, ready to start the van and get out of there. But before I could do anything, he raised his hand and tapped on the window. Tap, tap, tap. Each sound echoed in the silence, sending chills down my spine. I didn't know what he wanted. Was he trying to scare me? Rob me? Hurt me? My mind was racing with a million possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. I wanted to scream for help, but my voice was trapped in my throat. Then he spoke. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it felt like nails on a chalkboard. He said something about needing a ride, but his tone was off, threatening. I shook my head, trying to signal that I couldn't help him. But he just kept staring, that eerie smile never leaving his face. I didn't know how long we stayed like that, locked in this terrifying standoff. It felt like hours, but it was probably just minutes. Finally, he stepped back, still grinning that twisted grin, and walked away into the darkness. I didn't dare move until I was sure he was gone. When I mustered the courage to look outside again, there was no sign of him. I started the van and got out of there as fast as I could, heart pounding in my chest the whole way. I drove to the nearest town, shaking uncontrollably. I found a motel and locked myself in, afraid to even close my eyes. I didn't sleep that night, haunted by the memory of that man and his chilling smile. The next day, I reported what happened to the authorities, but they couldn't find any trace of him. They said they'd keep an eye out, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, followed, even when I left that town. I still think about that night, about the fear that consumed me. I don't know what that man's intentions were, but I never want to experience something like that again. I lost my job, couldn't pay the rent. That's how I ended up in my van, navigating the maze of New York streets and parking lots, making them my temporary homes. It was tough, but the van became my refuge, my sanctuary amid the chaos of the city. One night, I parked in a dimly lit street, The usual routine: lock the doors, close the curtains, and get lost in a book. But that night, there was a strange vibe in the air, a whisper of something off-kilter. I couldn't shake off the feeling. It clawed at me, urging me to look outside. And when I did, I saw her, a silhouette, standing by the streetlight. She was unmoving, almost like a statue in the night. People sometimes wandered these streets, but there was something about her that sent shivers down my spine. The city noises faded into the background, swallowed by a deafening silence. I couldn't discern her face in the darkness, but her presence was unsettling. My instinct screamed at me to stay hidden, to ignore her, but a primal curiosity took hold. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was just being paranoid. But she lingered, and so did the unease. I looked away, buried myself in my book, pretending everything was normal. Minutes crawled by like hours, and when I glanced back, she was gone. The relief was short-lived. A tap on my window made my heart leap. I spun around, and there she was, face pressed against the glass, an eerie smile etched on her lips. A chill ran down my spine, freezing me in place. I didn't dare move, hoping it was a figment of my imagination. But she didn't flinch. Her eyes bore into mine, sending a wave of dread crashing over me. I hesitated, then slowly rolled down the window. Maybe she needed help. But as the glass descended, the air grew heavier, thick with an inexplicable tension. She whispered something, words that sent a jolt of fear through my veins. I couldn't comprehend what she said, just a string of disjointed sentences, words that made no sense. My instinct screamed at me to drive away, but fear held me captive. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the window, and I felt a surge of panic. The moment stretched into eternity, and then she laughed, a hollow, bone-chilling sound. I slammed the window shut, heart pounding against my chest. I fumbled for my keys, hands shaking, and turned the ignition. The van roared to life, but as I glanced in the rearview mirror, she was there, still standing, her eyes fixed on me. I drove, not caring where, just away. The city's streets blurred past me, but the image of her haunted my mind. Fear gripped me like a vice, a terror I couldn't shake off. Even when I found a new spot to park, the unease lingered. Every shadow seemed like her silhouette, every rustle of the wind her whisper. Sleep was out of the question. The night felt too hostile, too alive with her presence. It wasn't until the first light of dawn broke that the fear ebbed, replaced by exhaustion. But the memory of her face, that unsettling encounter, lingered, a nightmare that felt too real. I was cruising through Green Mountain National Forest, just me and my van. It was peaceful, the kind of place where the trees tower over you, and the silence is almost deafening. I liked it, being surrounded by nature, away from the noise of the city. So, I parked my van at this spot, nestled deep in the forest. It was quiet, serene, and I thought it'd be a perfect place to spend a few days. The first night was fine. I cooked dinner, read a bit, and fell asleep to the sound of crickets chirping outside. But the next day, things got weird. I went for a walk, just exploring the area, when I stumbled upon something odd. There was this clearing in the forest, and in the middle, there were weird symbols carved into the ground. I didn't know what they meant, but they sent a chill down my spine. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was probably just some prank or kids messing around. But as the days went by, I started feeling like I was being watched. It was a gut feeling, you know? Every time I stepped outside the van, I felt eyes on me, like someone was lurking in the shadows. Then, one evening, I saw him. A man emerging from the trees. He looked rough, like he hadn't seen civilization in ages. His clothes were torn, his hair a wild mess. He didn't say anything, just stared at me with these piercing eyes. I tried to act normal, asked if he needed help, but he didn't respond. He just turned and vanished back into the forest. That encounter spooked me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that guy. So, I started keeping my doors locked, windows shut tight, but the feeling of being watched lingered. And then, I found something that made my skin crawl. I was exploring around the area, and I stumbled upon a hidden shack deep in the woods. It was run down, barely standing, but there was something about it that drew me in. Curiosity got the best of me, and I pushed open the creaky door. Inside, it was like a nightmare. The walls were covered in writings, scribbles that looked like gibberish. There were pictures pinned up, photos of people, some torn, some with creepy drawings over their faces. I felt a lump form in my throat as I realized I might have stumbled upon something sinister. That's when I heard footsteps outside. My heart raced, and I hid behind the door, praying whoever it was wouldn't come in. The footsteps stopped right outside the shack, and I held my breath, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The door creaked open slowly, and I saw him again, that man from before. He entered the shack, scanning the room, and I swear our eyes locked for a second. I was trembling, terrified he'd see me, but he didn't. He was muttering to himself, pacing back and forth, like he was searching for something. I waited, praying he'd leave, and after what felt like an eternity, he did. I didn't dare move until I was sure he was gone. Then, I ran back to my van, heart pounding in my chest. I started the engine and got out of there, not looking back until I hit the main road. I reported what I found to the police, but they said they'd investigate. I left Vermont, but that sense of being watched never left me. I kept looking over my shoulder, feeling like I was being followed, even when I was miles away. I don't know what that man was up to, what those symbols meant, or what dark secrets were hidden in that forest. But I can't shake off the feeling that I stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to. I was on my own, just me and my van, cruising through Redwood National Park in California. It was a gorgeous place, but the woods there, they were something else. Tall trees, thick shadows, and a silence that felt heavy. I loved being surrounded by nature, but those woods, they had this eerie vibe to them. One evening, I parked my van in a quiet spot near the edge of the woods. The sun was setting, casting long shadows among the trees. It was beautiful, but gave me this uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I brushed it off, thinking it was just the darkness creeping in. That night, as I lay in my van, trying to sleep, I heard something outside. It was faint at first, like twigs snapping or leaves rustling. I told myself it was probably just an animal, nothing to worry about. But then it got closer. The noises grew louder, as if someone was moving around the van. I felt a chill run down my spine. I stayed still, listening intently, trying to make out what was happening. That's when I saw him, a figure standing just beyond the tree line. It was too dark to see his face, but I could feel his eyes on me. I didn't know what to do. Should I start the van and drive away? Or was it just someone passing through? I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but that feeling of being watched, pursued, it lingered. The next day, I explored the park, hoping to shake off that unease. But no matter where I went, it felt like someone was following me. Every time I glanced back, I half expected to see the figure among the trees, but there was nothing. Night fell again, and I parked in a different spot, deeper into the woods. As I lay in bed, I heard the same noises, twigs snapping, leaves crunching. I peeked outside, but there was nothing. Still, that feeling of being watched, it was suffocating. The following days felt like a game of cat and mouse. Every time I turned, every time I looked over my shoulder, I felt like someone was there, lurking in the shadows. I couldn't shake it off. This constant feeling of being pursued followed. One night, I saw him again, that figure standing at the edge of the clearing. This time, I was sure he was watching me. I felt a knot in my stomach, fear creeping in. I shouted, asking who he was, what he wanted, but there was no response. He just stood there, unmoving, like a statue. I locked myself in the van, heart pounding, feeling trapped. I thought about driving away, but what if he followed? What if he was waiting for me to make a move? I stayed awake that night, listening for any sound, any sign of him. But there was nothing, just the silence of the woods. When morning came, I decided to leave, to get as far away from those woods as possible. As I drove out of the park, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that figure trailing behind me. But the road was empty, and slowly, that feeling of being pursued faded away. I never figured out who that person was or why they seemed to be following me. Maybe it was all in my head. I was driving through Joshua Tree National Park, just me and my van, enjoying the open road. It was this vast desert landscape, serene yet haunting in its own way. I parked for the night, wanting to soak in the beauty of the starry sky. That's when I noticed her, a woman standing by the edge of the campsite. She looked disheveled, her clothes worn, like she'd been wandering for a while. I felt a pang of concern, thinking maybe she needed help. I stepped out of my van and approached her, asking if everything was okay. But she just looked at me with these haunted eyes, like she had seen something terrifying. She whispered, "Leave before it's too late. This place, it's not what it seems. There are things here you can't understand." I was taken aback, unsure what she meant. I asked her to elaborate, but she shook her head, her voice trembling. "Just leave. Trust me, you don't want to be here when it comes." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, but I didn't know what to make of it. I thanked her, thinking maybe she was just disturbed or lost, and went back to my van. I tried to shake off her warning, telling myself she was probably just a bit off. As night fell, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. It was like her warning had planted a seed of fear in my mind. I tried to distract myself, read a book, but every noise outside made me jump. Then, I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching on the desert sand. I peeked out of the window, but I couldn't see anyone. My heart was racing, and I felt this knot in my stomach. I tried to brush it off as my imagination, but the footsteps kept getting closer. I wanted to start the van and leave, but fear held me back. I felt trapped, like something was creeping up on me. I saw movement outside, a shadowy figure moving between the cacti. My hands were trembling as I reached for something, anything to defend myself. But before I could react, there was a knock on the van door, slow and deliberate. I froze, not daring to make a sound. The knock came again, louder this time. I held my breath, feeling the weight of the desert silence pressing down on me. Then, a voice, soft and eerie, whispered through the door, "It's here. You need to go, now." I didn't know what to do. Should I listen? Should I ignore it? Fear had a grip on me, and I felt this overwhelming sense of danger. I mustered the courage to peek outside, but there was no one there. I wanted to start the van and drive away, but my body refused to move. I was paralyzed by fear, the desert night feeling suffocating, closing in on me. Then, there was a tapping on the window, slow and deliberate. I turned, and there she was, the woman from earlier. Her eyes were wide, filled with terror. She mouthed, "Leave," before disappearing into the darkness. That was it for me. I started the van, not caring which way I went, just wanting to get out of there. As I drove, I could feel eyes on me, like something was following, chasing me through the desert. I was on this road trip across Europe, living in my van and soaking in the beauty of new places. It was an adventure, you know? One night, I parked my van in a quiet corner of the city. It was getting late, and I was tired, so I crawled into my sleeping bag and dozed off. Sometime in the dead of night, I was jolted awake by this noise. It was a scraping sound, like metal against concrete. I tried to shrug it off, thinking it was just some late-night construction or something. But then, I heard it again, closer this time, echoing through the empty streets. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, trying to figure out what was going on. I looked out the window, and that's when I saw him. A guy, dressed in tattered clothes, dragging something heavy behind him. It looked like a chain or, I don't know, something massive. I felt this chill run down my spine. He wasn't just walking, he was dragging his feet, slow and deliberate. I didn't know what to make of it, but something about him felt off, wrong. I tried to stay quiet, not wanting to draw attention, but I was terrified. He disappeared down an alley, but that scraping sound lingered in the air. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was really wrong. I wanted to leave, to start the van and get out of there, but fear rooted me to the spot. I lay back down, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just some guy doing hard work late at night. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The atmosphere felt wrong, like danger was lurking in the shadows. I must have dozed off again, but I was awakened by this tapping sound on the van. It was soft at first, almost like a gentle knock. I froze, hoping it was just my imagination. But then, it grew louder, more insistent. I didn't dare move, fearing whoever was outside would hear me. The tapping continued, rhythmic and eerie. It felt deliberate, like someone was trying to get my attention, trying to lure me out. I peeked through the window, heart racing, and there he was again, that guy from before, standing right outside my van. His eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, and he was holding something in his hand. It looked like a worn-out photograph. I wanted to scream, but fear gripped my throat. He held up the photograph, this unsettling smile on his face. Then, he gestured for me to come out, mouthing something I couldn't make out. I shook my head, mouthed back that I didn't understand. But he kept insisting, tapping on the window with the photograph. It was like he wanted me to leave the safety of the van, to step out into the darkness with him. I felt this sense of dread, like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I stayed still, hoping he'd give up and leave, but he just stood there, staring, tapping, his smile never fading. Then, he dropped the photograph and reached for something in his pocket. My heart sank, and I knew I had to get out of there. I scrambled for the keys, ready to start the van and speed away, when suddenly, there was a loud noise from the street. I glanced outside and saw a police car pulling up. Relief washed over me, and I thought it was all going to be okay. But when I looked back, the guy was gone, vanished into thin air. The police officers approached, asking if everything was all right. I tried to explain what happened, but they didn't find anyone matching the description. They told me to be careful and to call them if I saw anything suspicious again. I stayed awake the rest of the night, on edge, afraid he might come back. When morning came, I left that city behind, driving away as fast as I could. But that encounter, that chilling night, it stayed with me. It made me question the safety of sleeping in my van, of being alone in the darkness of unknown cities. I was driving my van along the desolate stretches of the Alaskan highway. It was this eerie kind of quiet, you know? Just me and the road, surrounded by vast wilderness. The sky was getting darker as the sun began to set, casting this orange glow over everything. As I drove, I noticed this car in my rearview mirror, far back at first. But as I continued, it seemed like the car was getting closer, speeding up. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe they just wanted to pass. But then, the car got really close, tailgating me, almost like they were following. I felt this pang of unease, like something wasn't right. I sped up a little, hoping they'd pass, but the car stayed right behind me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just someone in a rush or lost, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I turned on a few different roads, trying to lose the car, but no matter where I went, it stayed behind me. Panic started to set in, and my heart was racing. I didn't know what this person wanted or why they were following me, but it felt dangerous. The sky grew darker, and the road got lonelier. I couldn't see anyone in the car behind me, just this shadowy figure in the driver's seat. I tried to focus on the road, telling myself it was just my imagination, but that feeling of dread wouldn't go away. I decided to stop at a gas station, thinking maybe if I pulled over, the car would go past. But as soon as I parked, the car stopped too, a few spots away. My heart was pounding, and I didn't want to get out of my van, afraid of what might happen. I waited, hoping they'd leave, but they didn't. I saw the figure in the car, just sitting there, not moving, not getting out. It was getting really late, and I knew I had to do something. I mustered up the courage to get out of my van, trying to act normal, but my hands were shaking. I pretended to check something in my van, trying to catch a glimpse of the person in the other car. But there was nothing, just this feeling of being watched. I wanted to ask them what they wanted, but I was too scared. I got back in my van and started driving again, hoping to lose them. But they stayed right behind me, no matter how fast or slow I went. I felt this knot in my stomach, this sense of danger that wouldn't go away. The road was getting darker, and I realized I needed to find somewhere safe, somewhere with people. I saw a motel sign up ahead and drove towards it, hoping for some kind of refuge. But as I pulled in, the car followed, parking nearby. I rushed into the motel, my heart pounding in my chest. I told the receptionist what was happening, hoping they could help. They called the police, and I waited, feeling this intense fear, like I was being hunted. When the police arrived, the car was gone. They said they'd keep an eye out, but I couldn't shake off that feeling of being chased, of being in danger. I stayed in that motel room, trembling, scared to even look out the window. I didn't sleep that night, every sound outside making me jump. The next morning, I left that place, driving as far as I could from that stretch of road. But that feeling of being chased, of someone following me, it stayed with me. Alaska might be beautiful, but that night, on that desolate highway, it felt like a place of danger, a place where the wilderness wasn't the only thing to fear. That mysterious driver, the chase in the dark, it was a nightmare that I never want to relive. We were living life on the road in our camper van, exploring the country for the past 5 months. It was an adventure, you know? But this one night in New Orleans, things took a dark turn. We parked up at a local grocery store, wanting to rest for the night. It seemed quiet, nothing out of the ordinary. As the night settled in, we were just getting ready to sleep when we heard these voices outside. At first, we didn't think much of it, just people passing by. But the voices got louder, and we peeked out the window to see 3 men standing near our van. They looked rough, like they'd been through a lot. They were talking amongst themselves, casting glances at our van. My girlfriend and I exchanged nervous looks, not sure what they were up to. We hoped they'd move along, but they didn't. They started walking closer, and we could see this look in their eyes, something unsettling. We locked the doors, feeling this knot of fear in our stomachs. We didn't know these guys, didn't know what they wanted. One of them knocked on the van door, a heavy thud that echoed inside. We stayed quiet, hoping they'd think we were asleep. But they didn't leave, they just kept knocking, louder and louder. My girlfriend whispered that we should call the police, but we didn't want to make any noise. We were frozen, not knowing what to do, feeling trapped in our own home. The knocking stopped suddenly, and for a moment there was silence. Then we heard this scraping sound, like something metal against the side of the van. Panic surged through us, and we realized they were trying to pry open the door. I grabbed anything I could use as a weapon, ready to defend us. The scraping got louder, more aggressive. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the fear consuming me. My girlfriend was trying to hold back tears, and I felt this intense need to protect her. Just when I thought they'd break in, the scraping stopped. I didn't know if they gave up or if they were planning something else. We sat there in the darkness, holding our breath, waiting for something to happen. Then, we heard them whispering outside, their voices muffled but filled with this sinister tone. They were talking about us, about what they wanted to do. My stomach churned, and I felt sick with fear. Suddenly, we heard footsteps walking away, fading into the distance. We didn't move, didn't dare to make a sound until we were sure they were gone. It felt like hours before we even dared to look outside. When we finally peeked out, there was no sign of them. We stayed awake the whole night, on high alert, afraid they might come back. In the morning, we drove away as fast as we could, not looking back until we were miles away from that grocery store. We reported it to the police, but there wasn't much they could do without any solid evidence. I've been living the van life for a while now, cruising through different parts of the country. I found myself parked in the Everglades National Park in Florida. It's a beautiful but eerie place, you know? Marshes stretching out, silence broken only by the sounds of wildlife. That evening, the swampy landscape felt kind of creepy, with the shadows stretching and the air getting thick. I settled in for the night, the van doors locked, feeling safe inside. But as I was about to sleep, I heard this rustling outside, like someone moving through the marshes. I brushed it off, thinking it was probably just some animal. But then, I heard it again. This time, it sounded closer, deliberate. I peeked out the window but didn't see anything. I told myself it was just my imagination, but that feeling of unease lingered. I tried to sleep, but every little noise outside made me jump. It was late when I heard footsteps approaching the van. My heart raced, and I held my breath, hoping it was just a hiker passing by. I peeked out and saw this guy, a hunter, standing near the van. He looked rough, like he'd been out in the wilderness for ages. He had this intense stare, like he was sizing me up. I tried to act normal, asked if he needed help, but he just stared back, not saying a word. He had this rifle slung over his shoulder, and the way he looked at me, it sent shivers down my spine. I felt this urge to lock the doors tighter, to drive away, but I didn't want to provoke him. He just stood there, in the darkness, watching me. I tried to convince myself it was just a guy passing through, but his presence felt off, wrong. He lingered for a while, then disappeared into the marshes. I stay awake, feeling this sense of dread, like he might come back. I must have dozed off eventually, but I kept waking up, startled by every sound. In the morning, I woke up to the van rocking slightly. I peered outside, and there he was again, that hunter, pacing around the van. My heart raced, and I felt this knot in my stomach. I wanted to start the van and get out of there, but I was frozen, too scared to make a move. He didn't seem to notice I was awake, just kept pacing, muttering to himself. I felt this overwhelming fear, like something was about to go terribly wrong. I didn't know what this guy was capable of, what his intentions were. Suddenly, he stopped pacing, looked straight at the van. I ducked down, heart pounding, hoping he wouldn't see me. I heard him muttering something about the swamp being his territory, about protecting it. He lingered for what felt like an eternity before finally walking away into the marshes. I waited, not daring to move until I was sure he was gone. I packed up in a hurry, not wanting to stick around any longer. I drove out of there as fast as I could, not looking back until I was far away from the Everglades. I've been living the van life for a while now, exploring the beautiful landscapes of the country. Recently, I found myself parked in the vastness of the Painted Desert in Arizona. It's this breathtaking yet eerie place, with the sun painting the rocks and sands in vivid colors, but as night falls, it becomes hauntingly quiet, almost otherworldly. Something strange started happening though, and it's been giving me chills every night. My companion, a woman I've been traveling with, she started to disappear in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and she wouldn't be there, just gone without a trace. At first, I thought maybe she was going for a walk or needed some space. But each time, I found these cryptic clues left behind. Strange markings on the sand near the van, symbols that didn't make any sense to me. I tried talking to her about it during the day, but she brushed it off, said she must have wandered off in her sleep or something. But I knew it wasn't that simple. There was something off about the whole situation, something unsettling. It happened night after night, her disappearing, leaving behind these cryptic signs. I couldn't shake off this feeling of dread, this gnawing fear that something was very wrong. I wanted to leave, to drive away from that haunting landscape, but I felt this strange pull, this need to follow those clues. One night, I decided to stay awake, to see if I could catch her leaving. I pretended to sleep, but I was wide awake, every sense on alert. And just as I felt the eerie stillness settling in, I heard movement outside the van. I peeked out the window and saw her, walking away from the van into the desert, almost as if she was in a trance. I felt this cold sweat break out on my forehead, this overwhelming sense of foreboding. I didn't want to lose her in that vastness, so I followed, staying hidden, trying to keep up with her pace without being noticed. She moved with purpose, almost like she was being led by something or someone. I trailed her for what felt like hours, the desert landscape shifting in the moonlight. I saw her stop at this peculiar rock formation, and as she touched it, I swore I saw a shimmering light. I hid behind a nearby boulder, heart pounding in my chest, not knowing what was happening. She started digging in the sand near the rocks, uncovering something that glinted in the moonlight. Then, she disappeared again, leaving the object behind. I waited until she was out of sight before I cautiously approached. What I found was a small, ancient-looking box buried in the sand. It had these intricate engravings, symbols I couldn't comprehend. Curiosity and fear battled within me, but I couldn't resist opening it. Inside, there was this strange amulet, glowing softly in the darkness. It felt cold to the touch, and I could sense this unsettling energy emanating from it. I wanted to leave it there, bury it back and forget all about it, but I felt this inexplicable urge to keep it. It felt like it held answers, like it was tied to our strange disappearances. I took the amulet and hurried back to the van, feeling this overwhelming sense of danger, like I had trespassed into something forbidden. I didn't know what I had stumbled upon, but it felt like a Pandora's box of unknown terrors. I didn't sleep that night, the amulet sitting on the table, its soft glow casting an eerie light. I felt this sinking feeling that I had unlocked something beyond my understanding, something that shouldn't have been disturbed. The next morning, I confronted her about it, about her nightly disappearances and the strange clues. She looked at me with this distant expression, denying everything, saying it was all a dream. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had to get rid of that amulet, that it was the key to everything. So, I made the decision to drive far away from the painted desert, to bury that amulet in a place where it wouldn't haunt us anymore. I've been roaming around in my van for months, seeking out new places, and I stumbled upon this picturesque coastal town in Mendocino, California. At first glance, it was charming, the kind of place you see in postcards. But as I stayed longer, things started feeling off. The people here were friendly, but in a way that made my skin crawl. It was like they were hiding something behind their smiles, like they were all in on some secret I wasn't privy to. I tried to shake off that feeling, to tell myself I was just being paranoid, but it persisted. I parked my van near the coast, hoping for a peaceful stay. But each night, I could feel this tension in the air, this unspoken darkness that hung over the town. It felt like the town was holding its breath, waiting for something. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to strange noises outside my van, like whispers carried by the wind. At first, I thought it was just the sounds of a small town settling in for the night, but these whispers felt different, unsettling. The people around town would stare at me, not just a curious glance, but this intense, almost menacing gaze. I tried to brush it off, to ignore the feeling that I didn't belong, but it weighed on me. I'd walk into the local diner or the market, and conversations would suddenly stop, like they were talking about something they didn't want me to hear. I felt this isolation, this sense of being an outsider in my own surroundings. The longer I stayed, the more uncomfortable I became. There was this heaviness in the air, this unspoken tension that wrapped around the town like a shroud. I tried to connect with the locals, to strike up conversations, but they seemed guarded, like they were hiding something. One night, I was woken up by this eerie chanting echoing through the streets. It was soft at first, almost melodic, but as it grew louder, it turned into this chilling cacophony. I peeked outside, but I couldn't see anyone. It was like the whole town was chanting, their voices echoing off the coastal cliffs. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, like I was in the middle of something I couldn't comprehend. I stayed inside my van, heart pounding, trying to block out those haunting chants. The next morning, I decided to explore the town, hoping to find some answers. But wherever I went, people avoided eye contact, avoiding me like I was some kind of plague. It felt like they were hiding behind their closed doors, refusing to acknowledge my presence. I stumbled upon this old library, tucked away in a corner. It looked abandoned, but there was a dim light flickering inside. I felt this pull, this inexplicable need to go in, like something was drawing me towards it. As I stepped inside, the air felt heavy, like it was holding secrets from centuries past. The shelves were filled with ancient-looking books, some with faded symbols and strange markings on their spines. I felt this sense of unease, like I shouldn't be there, like I was treading on forbidden ground. I picked up one of the books, flipping through the pages, trying to make sense of the cryptic text. But it was all gibberish to me, symbols and drawings that looked otherworldly. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting to see one of the townspeople, but there was no one there. I felt this chill run down my spine, this overwhelming feeling of being watched. I hurried out of there, feeling this urgency to leave the town. It was like something was urging me to get away, to escape whatever darkness lurked within those coastal cliffs. I've been living the van life in Cornwall for a while now, exploring the coastal beauty of this place. It's been peaceful mostly, until this one night that shook me to the core. I parked my van in a secluded spot near the cliffs, thinking it'd be a quiet place to rest for the night. As darkness fell, I was getting ready to settle in when I heard these distant whispers outside. At first, I thought it might be the wind, but these whispers felt different, almost like someone was plotting something. I brushed it off, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, I heard footsteps around the van. It was unnerving, this feeling of someone lurking in the shadows. I peeked out the window, but I couldn't see anyone. I tried to convince myself it was just the sounds of the night, but my gut told me otherwise. I was about to go back to bed when I heard giggles, like young boys playing games. It was odd, being in such a remote place, and I wondered what kids would be doing out there in the dead of night. The giggling got closer, but something about it felt off, eerie. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was just kids messing around. But then, they started tapping on the windows, their giggles turning into this unsettling laughter. I froze, not knowing what to do. These boys, their laughter, it sounded malicious, like they were up to something. I tried to ignore them, hoping they'd leave, but they didn't stop. It was like they were playing a game, enjoying my fear. I mustered up the courage to peek outside, and I saw these figures, young boys standing there, but their faces were hidden in the darkness. They kept tapping on the windows, their laughter echoing through the night. I yelled at them, told them to leave, but they just laughed louder. It was this chilling, mocking laughter that sent shivers down my spine. I felt this rising panic, this sense of being trapped in my own van. I started the engine, wanting to drive away, but as soon as I did, they scattered, disappearing into the night. I felt this sense of relief, thinking they were finally gone. But then, I saw them again, standing in the distance, just watching. I didn't know what they wanted, why they were tormenting me like this. I tried to ignore them, hoping they'd give up and leave me alone. But they stayed there, like silent sentinels in the darkness. I decided to stay awake, not wanting to let my guard down. I felt this deep unease, like something wasn't right about these boys, their presence haunting me. As the night wore on, their laughter started again, but this time it was closer, almost right outside the van. I felt this surge of fear, my heart pounding in my chest. Then, I heard scratching on the sides of the van, this slow, deliberate scraping that made my blood run cold. I was terrified, not knowing what they were planning to do. I peeked outside, and they were there, surrounding the van, their faces still hidden. They were scratching the van with sticks, their laughter turning into this disturbing chant. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I yelled at them to stop, but they just kept going, their chant growing louder and more menacing. I felt trapped, helpless, not knowing how to escape this nightmare. Suddenly, they stopped, their laughter fading away. I waited, expecting them to come back, but they were gone. I didn't dare to sleep that night, afraid they might return. When morning came, I left that place, driving away as fast as I could. I reported it to the local authorities, but without any real evidence, there wasn't much they could do. Those boys, their chilling laughter, their sinister games, it felt like a horror movie come to life. I've been on the road for quite some time, living in my van and soaking in the freedom of exploring Florida Keys. It's a paradise down here, or so it seemed until I stumbled upon this RV park that felt off from the get-go. I parked my van in this place, thinking it'd be a good spot to rest for a while. The park had this strange vibe, not the usual friendly atmosphere you'd expect at a community like this. People seemed distant, almost guarded, avoiding eye contact. As days passed, I started noticing things that didn't add up. There were odd activities happening in the dead of night, shadows moving around, hushed conversations that abruptly stopped when I walked by. It felt like everyone had something to hide. I tried mingling, striking up conversations, but they were short-lived and evasive. It was like prying into their world was unwelcome, and that curiosity was eating at me. One night, I was jolted awake by muffled screams coming from somewhere within the park. It was unsettling, chilling, and I couldn't just ignore it. I wanted to believe it was someone's TV or a misunderstanding, but the gut feeling told me otherwise. I decided to investigate, creeping around the park to find the source of those screams. As I ventured deeper, I noticed some RVs with curtains drawn, lights flickering. I had this unnerving sensation that I was intruding into something that shouldn't be discovered. Then, I heard whispers, faint but distinct. It was coming from a secluded corner where a group of people gathered. They were talking in hushed tones, their faces hidden in the shadows. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded urgent, tense. As I tried to inch closer to eavesdrop, a sudden rustling alerted them. They turned, their eyes locking with mine, and in that moment, I felt this chilling realization that I had stumbled onto something dark. Without a word, they dispersed, vanishing into the night. My heart raced, and a cold sweat broke out. I wanted to leave, to forget what I had witnessed, but this curiosity gnawed at me, urging me to dig deeper. The following day, I tried to blend in, observe, and gather any clues about what was going on. But it seemed like the entire park was silent, like nothing unusual had ever happened. The feeling of unease grew stronger, and I couldn't shake the haunting memory of those whispers, those faces concealed in darkness. I felt like an intruder, and the more I tried to uncover the truth, the more perilous it became. Nights were the worst. I couldn't sleep, haunted by those screams and the secrets hiding within the park's walls. It felt like I was losing my mind, like this place was sucking me into its eerie underbelly. One evening, as dusk settled in, I caught sight of a group of individuals hauling something heavy, covered with a tarp, towards the outskirts of the park. Their hurried, furtive movements struck a chord of fear in me. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to confront them, to demand answers, to put an end to the mystery shrouding the RV park. But as I approached, they vanished into the dense foliage, leaving behind a chilling silence. I was determined. I ventured into the thicket they disappeared into, determined to uncover the truth. But the further I ventured, the more the shadows seemed to close in on me, and a sense of foreboding consumed me. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a secluded clearing, and what I saw made my blood run cold. It was a makeshift altar, surrounded by candles and strange symbols etched onto the ground. I felt this inexplicable terror as if I had intruded on something sinister. Before I could make sense of it, I heard footsteps approaching. I turned to find a group of individuals, their eyes filled with a malevolent glint. They were chanting something in an unknown language, a ritualistic fervor enveloping them. I fled, not looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. I drove away from that RV park, the horror of what I had witnessed haunting my every thought. I reported it to the authorities, but the fear lingered, the unknown secrets of that place leaving an indelible mark on my soul. Florida Keys might be known for its serene beauty, but beneath that picturesque facade lies a hidden darkness, a menacing underbelly that I stumbled upon, leaving me in a state of perpetual terror and disbelief. I've been cruising along the highways in my van, enjoying the freedom that comes with the open road. But there was this one night on I-10 in Texas that turned into a chilling experience I won't forget. It was getting late, and I needed a place to pull over for the night. I spotted a rest stop and figured it'd be a safe spot to park. As I settled in, I noticed a couple of trucks parked nearby, their engines idling. I didn't think much of it at first, just assumed they were taking a break like me. As the night grew darker, things started feeling off. I noticed the truckers gathering around, shooting glances in my direction. It made me uncomfortable, this sense of being watched, scrutinized. I tried to shake off that feeling, reminding myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, I heard murmurs, snippets of conversations that didn't sit right. It was like they were talking about me, their voices hushed but filled with something ominous. I locked the van doors, feeling this unease settling in. I watched them from my window, noticing their movements, the way they lingered around their trucks, occasionally glancing in my direction. I wanted to sleep, to forget about the eerie atmosphere, but I couldn't shake off this feeling of being unsafe. It was this gut instinct, this primal warning that something wasn't right. The night wore on, and I could hear footsteps outside the van, not just one set, but several. It felt like they were circling the van, sizing it up, and it sent a shiver down my spine. I peeked outside, trying to see who it was, but it was too dark. The only thing visible were the dimly lit trucks, and I felt this rising panic, this realization that I might be in real danger. I debated whether to start the engine and drive away, but a sense of fear rooted me in place. I didn't want to draw attention or provoke them, hoping they'd just go away. But then, I heard this loud bang on the side of the van, like someone hitting it with force. I jumped, my heart racing, and that was the moment when I knew I had to leave. I started the van, but as I did, I saw figures emerging from the darkness, the truckers, moving closer to my van. It was this terrifying sight, this group of men advancing towards me, and I felt this surge of fear, primal and raw. I drove away as fast as I could, the image of those men lingering in my rearview mirror. I didn't stop until I was far away from that rest stop, heart pounding, hands shaking on the wheel. I reported it to the authorities, but without any real evidence, there wasn't much they could do. It haunted me for days, that feeling of being targeted, of being so vulnerable in the dead of night. Texas might be known for its long stretches of highway, but that night on I-10, it felt like a nightmare come to life. The fear, the sense of being hunted, it's something I can't shake off, a chilling encounter that left me feeling more exposed than ever before. I've been on the road in my van, chasing the allure of freedom among the landscapes of Saguaro National Park in Arizona. It's a breathtaking place, but something's been weighing on me lately, this persistent feeling of being watched. It all started a few nights ago when I parked in this secluded spot within the park. I've always loved the solitude of these places, but this time it felt different. As darkness fell, this unease settled in, like someone's eyes were fixed on me, lurking in the shadows. I dismissed it at first, thinking it was just my mind playing tricks in the quiet of the night. But each night, the feeling grew stronger, this sense that I wasn't alone, that there was someone out there, observing me. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the distance, a figure standing among the cacti and rocks. It was always too far to make out any features, just this vague silhouette, but it sent shivers down my spine. I tried to convince myself that it was just another park visitor, someone enjoying the scenery. But there was something off about it, this persistent presence, always there when darkness blanketed the park. The worst part was the feeling of being vulnerable, exposed in my van with someone lurking out there. I'd lock the doors, draw the curtains, but it didn't ease this nagging fear that I was being watched. Each night, I'd peer out, hoping not to see that figure, but it was always there, watching me from a distance. It was unnerving, this constant surveillance, and it started to affect me, invading my thoughts even during the day. I debated whether to leave, to find another spot, but I couldn't shake off this feeling that I was being tested, that running away wasn't the solution. I tried talking to other campers, asking if they'd noticed anything strange, but they just brushed it off, said it was probably a ranger or a fellow traveler. But I knew it wasn't that simple, that this was something else, something sinister. One night, I mustered up the courage to shine a flashlight towards where I saw the figure. For a split second, I caught a glimpse of someone darting behind a saguaro cactus, this fleeting shadow disappearing into the darkness. It confirmed my suspicions. There was someone out there, intentionally hiding and watching me. Fear gripped me, this feeling of being a target, and I knew I had to do something. I reported it to the park rangers, but without concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They patrolled the area more frequently, but whoever it was seemed to vanish before they arrived. The nights became unbearable, this constant dread of what might happen. I barely slept, always on edge, listening for the slightest sound outside. Then one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I saw movement again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a flashlight and rushed towards where I saw the figure. As I approached, I saw a man standing there, his gaze fixed on me. He had this unsettling smile, this eerie calmness in his eyes. I demanded to know why he'd been watching me, but he just chuckled, saying nothing. I turned and sprinted back to my van, heart racing, hands trembling. I drove away from that spot, leaving behind that haunting presence, but the fear lingered, this feeling of being targeted, watched, and unable to escape it. Saguaro National Park, with its beauty and serenity, turned into a nightmare, a place where the peaceful landscapes held a menacing secret, leaving me feeling exposed and terrified.